York. Fauci's unhappy about the college football situation, that's for sure, which is fascinating because there was also the U.S. Open tennis tennis matches occurring over the weekend. There have been huge gatherings for quite some time now. Why is it that college football comes in for special attention here? Here is Fauci on CNN this morning getting the usual back rub they give him over there.
I get folks want to go back to normal life. They want to go to games, right? I want to go to games. But when you look at crowds like that, do you approve of that? Or is that just not smart?
No, I don't think it's smart. I think when you're dealing particularly outdoors is always better than indoors. But even when you have such a congregate setting of people close together, first you should be vaccinated. And when you do have congregate settings, particularly indoors, you should be wearing a mask.
Wait, I thought it was, so BLM riots, close quarters outside, good. Professional tennis matches, good. The big concert they had in Chicago over the summer, I forget what it was even called. Was it Lollapalooza or something like that? That's right.
Yeah.
That's all fine, Clay. College football is somehow, even outdoors, a special super spreader of event because it's a congregate setting.
Look, here is what's going on, and I think this is what scares the Fauciites. When Americans put on their television screens and they see millions of college football fans exulting, joyous, having an incredible time all over this country. Red state, blue state, it didn't matter. None of them are wearing masks. This is a declaration of independence, an end of fear, and everything COVID has been predicated on fear. And Buck, as soon as enough Americans get out and start living their lives, it makes it harder to argue this is an abnormal situation. Think about this for a minute, Buck. Virginia, Friday night, Virginia Tech. They play Enter Sandman. People lose their minds in joy in Virginia. Jump Around plays in Wisconsin. These are two states that Joe Biden ostensibly won, and the people are saying, we're going to go out and live our lives. And I think this is significant. There are more COVID positive cases right now this Labor Day, Buck, than there were last Labor Day. Last Labor Day, they told kids in Virginia it's not safe for you to play high school football. They told the Big Ten they couldn't play college football last September. There are more cases now. And I think reasonable, intelligent people, and that's what a lot of college football fans are, look at the numbers. No, COVID is never going away. We're 18 months in, and at some point your new reality requires risk, and you're going to go back to doing the things that you love. I went to college football games this weekend. I took my kid to go see a Marvel movie in the theater. Nobody had masks on, Buck. Nobody in the movie theater. Nobody at the football game. People are over it. Large percentages of people are, and I love to see it.
In some places they are.
Yeah.
In other places, I mean, what I think is happening, Clay, is the polarization of mitigation measures, as Fauci says. The polarization is actually growing, whereby people in parts of New York and California, they're clinging to their masks even more furiously than they have in a long time, not since the very beginning of the pandemic. And there's a backdrop with all of this as well of the Biden administration has failed to deliver on the essential promise they made, which among many promises that were lies, normalcy, unity, healing, right? This was all campaign stuff to get low information voters who are persuadable, unfortunately, to believe the propaganda of the news. The Biden administration is flatly failing at this point on COVID.
Failing at everything.
Based on their own predictions, promises, what they said would happen, where they said we would be. This is why there have been all these reversions. And it's interesting. Some have started to finally ask. I'm seeing more of this now, Clay. The fundamental question in all of this for the whole country, in some ways for the world. Okay, how does this actually end? If we had a real press corps, they would sit down with Fauci and say, how does this actually stop? When do we get to live our lives again?
It's the most important question. I saw, and I think you probably saw this same article, Vox, which is a super liberal website, has that question, and they're finally asking the things that we've been asking for the last 18 months. And let me just kind of run through some of these. 90,000 people died of drug overdoses in this country in 2020. 40,000 people every year die in car accidents. Around tens of thousands, 60,000 or more people die of the seasonal flu every year, and we live normal lives. How do we assess as a country what is a reasonable amount of risk that is going to exist for COVID? Because even though many of them will not acknowledge it, COVID-0 isn't a reality. It's never going to exist for the rest of our lives. And so being an adult requires analyzing risk and figuring out what to do. Remember, people made fun of us early on, Buck, when people like you and I would say, hey, you know what? 40,000 people a year die in car accidents. We don't insist on a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit, which would drive that number down to zero. We balance risk with life.
Some folks may actually remember this, that I had you on my show, not because I'm hugely knowledgeable about sports, but I'm getting better. I'm going to a college football game. Going to a college football game, folks, is happening. But I had you on because there were so few of us in the beginning who were willing to take the perspective. And you were, I mean, it was a small group of us that had, platforms that could reach across the country who from March of 2020 were saying, hold on a second. What is this? What are we doing? And now we've seen all of our worst fears about zero COVID, right? Or you could say forever mitigation, zero COVID, however you want to put it. I mean, Clay, Australia has straight up quarantine camps. Some people are using other terms for it, but we got quarantine camps. You have to go. You could be a healthy 25-year-old. You test positive for COVID. You cannot stay at a hotel. You cannot self-quarantine. If you're traveling, you must go to one of these camps, stay for 14 days. You can't see anyone. You can't do anything. You can't go to your job. And there are libs in this country who see the news reporting out of Australia and say, well, they're really doing it the right way. I look at them like you people are out of your minds.
When have camps ever ended up being good? Like, there's just like the big picture here. Let's go back through history. When have the people who are like, hey, we need to separate people and put them in camps different than everybody else ever been on the right side of history? When have people who've been like, hey, you know what, that book is scary, we need to burn it and make sure other people can't see it, that idea makes me uncomfortable, that person needs to be canceled for having it? When have the people that have ever argued in favor of these things, in retrospect, when sanity returns to society, and it always does? People talk a lot about the right and wrong side of history, Buck. Most of those people have read very little history, because what you would learn is very often in the moment itself, the right side and wrong side of history isn't self-evident. Sometimes it takes hundreds of years, but book burning, censorship, internment camps, all of those things in the moment are always on the wrong side of history.
And when you see the change in the thinking from people in the last 6 months even who have been, I think Fauciites is the best way to describe them. There are a lot of ways we could refer to them. Clay, it went from gentle, a sort of gentle pitch. Hey, guys, just do this. Just get the shot. And we all know about the just 2 weeks and, to slow the spread and all this. But in particular with the vaccines, it's gone from, oh, come on, everything's going to be fine. Just get it. We'll all go back to normal, but we're not going to make you, to, oh, no, we're going to coerce you, to now, it's not only that they want to coerce you, they want to punish people for not just COVID wrong think, but COVID wrong do, in a sense, right? COVID, violations of the new passports we're supposed to carry or travel you're not supposed to do. They're arresting people over this stuff. I mean, you look in Europe, they'll actually send in police head to toe, looking like stormtroopers. I guess stormtroopers in Star Wars are in white, but you know what I mean? The sort of jackbooted thugs in the gear going in there, beating people with batons because they don't agree with some of the vaccine policies.
Yeah, and again, I think the big question is, and this is what reasonably intelligent media who are actually doing their job would be discussing, is how does this end? How do we get to a form of normalcy? And that's why the college football crowds, to me, were a big part of this. My argument for how this ends is people just return to being normal. What can you do? We get that question all the time, Buck. What can I do? You can be normal. You can go to a college football game and sit in a crowd. You can go to a movie theater. You can go out to dinner. You can argue against your kids needing to be required to wear masks, and you can get exemptions for them as necessary. Fight for normalcy. That's how we win. And the more normal people see things occurring, people may be terrified in their basement in New York City, Buck, but when they flip on their television and they see 90,000 people in Wisconsin jumping around to a song, and they see Enter Sandman coming on at Virginia Tech, and they see 100,000 millions of people all over the country going to football games, they definitely have to think in the back of their mind, wait a minute, why do I have to show a vaccine passport to go get a beer in my city?
There are some stadiums, right, that are going to require it. Not these college football
so far,
stadiums
but, yeah.
yet, but there are some pro stadiums that are required. So the fight is still very much underway, folks, for freedom. We'll come back into more of this in a moment, plus back of the line for ICU access. I mean, the things that are being said now. Oh, and ivermectin. I know Clay mentioned some of this to you yesterday, but we got to come back to it because there are updates about how ivermectin is overrunning the ER of a hospital.
It's a total lie.
Total lies. Anyway.